Hello my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I have another book talk video to share with you guys. And today we are talking about The Dollhouse by Phoebe Morgan. The Dollhouse is a bit of a psychological thriller, a bit of a mystery. If you love books like that, which I know a lot of you do, I think you'd like this one. I will say, I guessed the big twist fairly early on. It became quite obvious. But then there was a final twist, a final little twist at the end that I hadn't seen coming. So it got me there. And I don't really mind too much if I manage to guess some of the twists, as long as the book's well written, you know what I'm saying? Because I've read so many books with twists and turns that as soon as I start reading, my brain starts guessing. And I guess the craziest things I can think of. And sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm not. Now don't get me wrong, I love it when I'm completely blindsided, love it. But just because I know kind of whodunit, that doesn't turn me off completely from a book. So let's jump on into The Dollhouse. So the book is about two sisters. There's Corinne and there's Ashley. They're adults. Corinne has a longtime boyfriend named Dominic, and they are desperately trying to get pregnant. Desperately. They've moved on now to IVF options, and they've had a few unsuccessful attempts, and they're finally kind of at their wits' end. They're going to try one more time, and that's sort of where we pick up with them. On the other hand, we have Ashley. She's a wife and mother of 3. She has a teenage daughter named Lucy, a middle child named Benji, and then a little baby named Holly. So we meet them and we're kind of going back and forth between their chapters. Interlaced in between the present day chapters are chapters entitled Then, and they're written in italics, and they're from the past, and they're from the point of view of kind of a third party, not either of the sisters or their partners, but from a third party that starts off as sort of a little girl, and she's with her mom, and they're doing weird things in the nights. They're sort of stalking this family. And pretty soon we piece together that it's this family, Ashley and Corinne, but when they were growing up in their family home. So what else we know about the sisters is that their dad recently passed away. He was an architect, kind of a famous architect, and in their eyes, he's perfect. He was, you know, the ultimate loving husband and father, and they lived a privileged life in a fancy part of town in a big house. They wanted for nothing. So as we get to know the sisters a bit more, we find out on Ashley's side that her husband's working super late hours, kind of all of a sudden in the past little while, and she's starting to get a little suspicious that he might be having an affair. Because like all hours of the day, he's jetting off to work, and she's kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? Anytime she tries to bring it up with him, he brushes it aside. And she's a bit distracted because their baby is just not doing well. She's crying all night long. She's feeling miserable. Ashley brings her into the doctor, and he's kind of like, well, I mean, it could just be night terrors or something like that, but we'll run some tests and see what we can find out. On Corinne's side, one day when she's at home, she notices that the door to her apartment is kind of ajar, and she goes, and in between sort of the door, what's making it not able to close, is there's a little tiny chimney pot that's very small, and right away she recognizes it as a piece of a dollhouse that her father built for her and her sister when they were kids. And she's really freaked out. And at first, of course, she doesn't assume that it's from the actual dollhouse. She's like, well, this is weird. It's similar to what would have been in my dollhouse. And she takes it actually as a good luck sign. Kind of like a loving symbol from her dad, and you know, it makes her feel good. Warms her heart. So she takes it in, and then a couple of days later, she goes to work. She works at an art gallery, and there on her desk is a little door. And she's now a little freaked out because she recognizes it as the front door from her dollhouse. And yeah, she's starting to get freaked out, and she mentions it to Dominic, her partner, and he kind of brushes it off. He's like, yeah, that's weird, but I mean, don't worry about it. It's nothing that weird. And she meets a new neighbor, a young girl named Gilly, or Jilly, I guess. And at first she's kind of short with her because Jilly has a little baby son, and Corinne, she can't help it. Anytime she sees someone with a baby, she gets a little weird because she wants it so badly. She wants that baby so bad. And after the exchange, she realizes she's being ridiculous, so she goes in and she apologizes. You know, she goes and knocks on her door and apologizes, explains the situation to her, and Jilly's like, it's okay. And Corinne decides in her mind that she's really going to make an effort to become friends with this girl because, you know, she'd like to have more friends in the area. And this girl's a young single mom. She could probably use a friend. Also, we get a few chapters from Dominic's point of view. And there's a new girl at work. Her name is Erin. And we meet her as we're learning a bit about Dominic's job. He's a reporter. He's covering one of the old houses in town. And he meets this girl, Erin, and his boss is super creepy, always is towards women, and he's being creepy towards Erin. And Dominic's kind of like, isn't she a little young for you? But, of course, he doesn't care. And so this is kind of all introduced, and you're kind of like, I wonder why. Why are we meeting this girl and this boss? And, like, you're just kind of thinking, like, it seems a little out of place. Because as you keep reading, you see that they're not really coming into play too much until later they do. So, like I said, we go back and forth between the sisters. So for Ashley, she's still just kind of struggling with her husband and the on and off worries about his infidelity. Then all of a sudden, her teenage daughter starts going out late at night, dressed up, high heels, short skirts, and then coming home drunk. And this is really out of character for Lucy. Eventually they're kind of like, well, I guess, you know, she's a teenager now. I guess this is bound to happen. But still, it's so sudden and it's so out of character. And Ashley tries to find out who Lucy's going out with, but she's really tight-lipped about it and won't tell her at first. Then back over on Corinne's side, we see her going for that final IVF treatment, which she actually got the money from her sister to do it because they were tapped out from their previous tries. And that one takes, and she ends up pregnant. And still the pieces of the dollhouse keep coming. She gets a rocking horse. That was a rocking horse that her father had given her one Christmas for the dollhouse. And at this point, she is truly disturbed. She knows that somebody is sending her piece by piece her dollhouse. So at one point, they go out to their mother's house for a dinner, and she asks her mom, can she see the dollhouse? And her mom says, oh, it's upstairs. Like, it's packed away really far back. Like, someday we'll take it out, but not today. Not today. I don't want to do that today. So Corinne lets it go in the moment, but that night, once everyone's asleep, she goes up there, and she can't find it anywhere. None of her dad's stuff is up there, and the dollhouse is nowhere to be seen. She keeps trying to bring it up with her mom, but her mom insists it's up there. Meanwhile, the then chapters are getting more and more disturbing. You know, they're stalking this family, and you get the sense that the father of that family, Ashley and Corinne's, is this young girl's father as well. And the mother is, you know, trying to get this man to come back to them. And it's really escalating, and the young girl in the then chapters is getting older and older. So as this is going on, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we have two potential suspects here. The young girl from the then chapters is either Jilly, Corinne's next door neighbor, or she's Erin, the new girl at Dominic's work. So at first it seemed like Jilly was the obvious choice, and then it'd be like, well, maybe it's Erin, and you just kind of go back and forth in your mind a bit. So then as time goes on with Corinne, she gets another gift from this mysterious gift sender, and it's one of the dolls from the house. And it's laying in the kitchen sink when she goes home one day, and the abdomen has been cut out, kind of where the doll's womb would be if she had one. And Corinne has recently found out that she's pregnant, and she takes this kind of as a threat. And she calls Dominic, and she is freaking out. There's a big kitchen knife that's missing, and she's freaking out, as you would be. Dominic's still he's kind of like, are you overreacting? Maybe. She starts to get really kind of hurt because he's not taking her seriously. And the tension of the story is just building and building. And while the tension is building, the date of her father's death, like the 1 year anniversary of his death, is looming closer and closer and closer. So, if you don't want spoilers, now is the time to click away. And if you do, let's get on into it. Finally, the truth about what's been going on with Ashley's husband, James, comes to light. She confronts him after she goes to the bank to withdraw some cash to go to lunch, and the bank account is empty. And the bank teller tells her that her husband was in and withdrew the money earlier. So she finally confronts him, and he tells her that no, he's not having an affair. He's quite offended that that's what she thought. And he tells her instead that there's been a business deal with his company that went very, very wrong, and that he was responsible for it. So the company was kind of on the verge of firing him when he, in a bid to get to keep his job, said, let me see if I can fix this as best I can. I'll put as much of my own money towards it as I can to make up for the loss, and let me see if I can mend some of these bridges. And so they give him a final chance. He didn't tell her any of that, instead just took the money when, if he had explained the situation, it could have saved them all a lot of trouble. But in the moment, of course, she is just so happy that he's not having an affair that they're able to move past it. She's very supportive of him as he is still trying to keep that job, which in the end he is able to do. So finally, it's the anniversary of their father's passing, and they're all going to meet up at the cemetery to put flowers on the grave, and then they're all going out to dinner. So we start getting sort of everybody's perspective of what's happening that day. And by this point, I've pretty much narrowed down that it's not Jilly. It's not. That'd be too obvious. That one's too obvious. It's Erin, the girl from Dominic's work. So on this day, Dominic is driving out of town to go pick up the girl's mom to bring her to the cemetery. He gets out to her house, and he finds her tied up in her living room. And, she's old, so being bound and thrown around, she's very hurt. And he goes in, he unties her, and she begins to tell him that this girl, Erin, and she names her Erin, showed up at the house. She said, I knew back in the day that Richard was having affairs. I knew it. But as soon as I saw this girl, I knew that she was his child because she looked so much like him. And so she had come in, brandishing the knife that she had stolen from Corinne's house, and tied Matilda up, Matilda's her mom. So he gets her into the car, and he is rushing into the city because he's terrified for Corinne, of course. So the first one to get to the cemetery is Ashley. And now, one thing that had also been threaded through the story was Ashley has a babysitter for Holly, for her youngest, when she goes to her part-time job. And the woman's name is June. She's elderly, Ashley really liked her. She thought she was a great babysitter. But it kept seeming like every time Ashley would pick her up, Holly would be more upset that night. And she couldn't put it together, you know, because June seemed so wonderful. So while Ashley is at the cemetery waiting, the doctor calls and he says, you need to come in. Like, Holly's going to be okay, but I need to talk to you. And we're kind of like, okay. So Ashley, of course, is like, can't you tell me over the phone? Like, I need to know. And he's like, listen, it's okay, but it's very important that I talk to you. So as she gets to the headstone, her father's headstone, after she had just dropped her daughter off at the babysitter, there's a blonde woman standing there. And we know, of course, that that's Erin. And she's holding something in her arms. And so Ashley approaches her, and is like, oh, it's my dad's headstone. And Erin says, this is my dad's headstone too. And then she just attacks. She's verbally attacking Ashley, telling her like, oh, none of you cared about me. You didn't care about me. Even though Ashley's trying to tell her, we didn't know about you. But Erin doesn't care. She doesn't care at all. And then she removes the blanket that she's holding to reveal that she's holding Holly, Ashley's baby. And Ashley screams and she makes a move for the baby, and Erin just drops the baby on the floor, on the ground, and she hits her head with a loud thud. And she explains to Ashley, like Ashley goes to run to get her, but Erin grabs her and has the knife to her, and Erin's telling her like, it was my mom. My mom is June, who's been babysitting your kid, and they'd been giving her prescription drugs that were for adults, not for kids. And that's why Holly had been getting sicker and sicker. And of course, that's what the doctor wants to tell her about, what he's found in Holly's system. And so Erin just rails on a bit more, and then she starts smacking Ashley's head off of her father's gravestone. And then that's kind of the last we see of Ashley for a while. Then we see Erin go after Corinne, and she finds her at the train, like at the train, underground train station, train stops. And she finds her there, and she's still got the knife, and she goes up to her and she gives her kind of the same spiel she gave Ashley about how nobody cared about me. Well, you're going to care about me now. And Corinne, of course, her main concern is her pregnancy. She doesn't want to lose that baby. And they're kind of having a bit of a tuffle, and then Erin falls down onto the train tracks just before the train is coming. Then we kind of get the aftermath. We see Dominic come and find Corinne, and he is so like thankful that her and the baby are okay, which she gets checked out and her and the baby are both fine. Then they go to see Ashley in the hospital. Ashley is unconscious for a few days, but then she wakes up, and everything's going to be okay with her. And also Holly's okay, although for a while she was in critical condition, but the doctors tell her she's going to be okay. We're going to get the drugs out of her system. Her head will be fine. Everything will be fine. So both of the girls and their children are okay. The police had tried to find Erin's mom, but she had packed up and gotten the hell out of town before anyone could find her. So everyone's a little scared because she's still out there. But the police are kind of like, no, it's okay. She wasn't the threat. Her daughter was the threat. She was manipulating her mother, but that doesn't sit right with Corinne. She kind of thinks, I think it was the other way around. I think the mother was manipulating the daughter, which we know is true because we've seen the chapters kind of detailing moments from Erin's childhood with her mother and how crazy her mother was. And then one day, Corinne's at work. She's quite pregnant. It's about 4 or 5 months later, and someone enters the gallery, and that someone is June, Erin's mom, and she brings her another piece of the dollhouse. And then Corinne's like, you cannot be here. You have to leave. And so she leaves, and then one of Corinne's co-workers is like, oh my God, was that who I think it was? And she says, yes. And she says, we have to call the police. And the co-worker is like, why would she be here? What does she want? And then we get, what Corinne is thinking, and she's remembering that day at the train station when Erin fell. But then we're getting the full memory of when Corinne saw Aaron standing there, she instead pushed her in front of the train. And so she says to her coworker in response to the question, what could she want? Why is she here? Corinne just says, revenge. And then that's the end of the book. So it was that tiny little twist at the end of Corinne actually having pushed her in front of the train that I hadn't seen coming, even though I had figured out quite a ways before the ending that Aaron was the culprit of it all in terms of the two girls, but that she was still under the manipulation of her mother. So it was a fun read. It's one of those quick reads that it's very much a page turner, and I read it in a couple days, and it was fun. It was fun. So if you like a good, quick, fast-paced page turner, I definitely recommend it. And there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of points I missed too, because this video would be an hour long if I tried to get everything in. But I hope you enjoyed this book talk video. On Monday, I'm going to have my final Game of Thrones video where we talk about the finale. And then it's over. So if you're not here for the Game of Thrones videos, they're almost over, I promise. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me for today. I hope you have a great weekend. If you like this video, give it a like. You know, why not? It's free. And subscribe if you want. If you've been thinking, should I? Maybe you should. And I'll see you on Monday, guys. Bye.